Mesachas Pesachim daf tzadi vov. The Gemara is a shaila of the imuri Pesach Mitzrayim hechte akterina will they makte the imurim of the Pesach Mitzrayim. And that the Gemara says, Manleimu Lachuto said that they didn't roast entire korbon together. It's machlokes mefarshim what they did with the imurim of the Pesach Mitzrayim. The Miri over here writes that they burnt independently the imurim l'shem gavoya. That means there was somewhat of a hakdara of the imurim of the Pesach Mitzrayim, even though they didn't have mizbeach, but there was a hakdara l'shem gavoya. However, the Ben Chananel and the Sameach and the Beskrov and the Haggadah learned that they roasted the entire korbon Pesach together with the imurim inside, and they ate the imurim together with the rest of the korbon Pesach. And they say also they eat even the chalov and the fats that were also they ate it, and the Beskrov explains that since it was korbon matan Torah, there was no issa chalavim, so there was a mitzvah to eat the entire korbon Pesach with the chalavim that was inside the korbon Pesach. So included in that mitzvah was the chalavim as well, and they couldn't leave over the chalavim ad Bikur. The Hanocha, the Sameach, and the Beskrov that they ate the chalavim because of the mitzvah of achilas korbon Pesach. It's totally in Machlokes Achronim, which you mentioned the Shum and the Pei Gimel, that the Shagis Ari learns that the chiv achilas korbon Pesach is to eat the entire korbon Pesach. It's all a chelik of the mitzvah of achilas korbon Pesach. However, the Minchas Chinuch says that the mitzvah of achilas korbon Pesach is only to eat the kazayis, so therefore the chalavim l'chor is not included in that mitzvah. And it's the Achronim Medayik from the Rambam. The Rambam learns that the whole din you can't leave over part of the korbon Pesach ad Bikur is because it is a nice. It's mashma that the mitzvah achilas korbon Pesach is only in the kazayis. Moving further on, the Mishnah says ma bein Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Doros. The Pesach Mitzrayim had a chiv mekchay mi be'asar. They had to be bought mi be'asar the 10th day of Nisan. And the Gemara says, Pesach Doros, although it didn't mekchay be'asar, but it had a chiv Bikur. You have to watch it from 4 days before the Akrava, and the Gemara learns out who the korbon tamid also needs Bikur dalad yom. Ayin the Turi Even in Megillah and Daf Chav Tes declares in the halacha that you need a Bikur on Pesach Doros. Is it Bikur only after you makdish the animal for korbon? You have to watch it after it has the kedushas korbon, or Bikur is enough even before it has the kedushas korbon. You have to watch it doesn't have a mum, and afterwards you makdish it. And to Yevon is Mayach to be, and he brings a raya from our sugya the fact that there's a difference between halacha mekrim ba'asar in Pesach Mitzrayim and the Bikur Doros. He says, what's the difference? The difference is, so we're in Rashi now, sugya, the mekrim ba'asar means you have to makdish it mi ba'asar l'chodesh. However, the Bikur Doros is the only halacha you have to watch it from a mum, but it's not halacha. The kedusha has to be chal mi ba'asar l'chodesh. Ayin the Chazon Ish and the Dvar Shmuel declare, perhaps not like the Turi Even, that you need a hakdasha. He said maybe it's enough hazmona ba'alma, just a yachid, the Pesach Mitzrayim for the korbon, that's enough to make him also. Or do you have to actually makdish it? And they bring a raya from Rashi that's mashma that it's enough hazmona ba'alma. Then he brings it to Evan that says not like that. Ayin sham. The Dvar Shmuel has another achakira in the Geder of the din mekrim ba'asar. Is it halach in the chefts of the korbon that the korbon has to be from the 10th day of Nisan, or it's the din in the chiv of the garva that each person, each and every one of the bnei chabura have to own the korbon already from the 10th day, or as long as the korbon was bought and set aside for the korbon Pesach, it's enough. And Vashmul brings a mechilta that says that mekrim ba'asar was chalad shlichus. You see clearly there was needed a shliach for all of the bnei chabura from the 10th day of the chodesh. An ikar halacha of Bikur that you need by korbon Pesach and the Tom and the Doros. There's machlokes Rashi and the Rambam. Rashi's mashma that each and every day of the 4 days before the Akrava, the korbon, you have to check to make sure there's no mum. However, the Rambam is mashma you don't have to check it every day. As long as you mazim it and set it aside and you're watching it from 4 days before, that's enough for the din Bikur of dalad yom. The Achronim have a tremendous shayla of what happens if you were not mevaker and you didn't set aside the korbon Pesach or korbon tamid 4 days before. Is that ma'akiv b'di'evid or it's not? The Minchas Chinuch writes that kepshuta it's not ma'akiv. However, it brings a toisis in sukkah that's mashma is ma'akiv, and it passes the korbon if you're not ma'akiv. The Orzarua has an arichas, and he proves from Baba Kam, but that Pei is that the time that Yerushalayim was under siege, the Goyim sent a korbon tamid every day over the wall into Yerushalayim to be brought as a korbon tamid. So even though they weren't weren't mavakit 4 days, you see it's not ma'akiv. Then the Azurah brings a Tosefta that says that that if someone is makriv or korbon tamid on Shabbos without bikur is chayiv chatas, you have to bring another korbon tamid. And he brings from the Tanakama that holds it's not ma'akiv. Ein Harafrayim, that's matmi on the Azurah, it's mashma stiu the karayis, and the Sifi Harafrayim on the mechilta from the father Minchas Avram, and the Minchas Avram in Menachis is Meirich with the Yesoid. He says a tremendous Yesoid the Gavra didn't Bikur, that there's 2 separate halachas in Bikur. One halacha in Bikur is a halacha in the Gavra that he has to mevaker, he has to watch the korbon 4 days before the akrovas korbon, and that's learned out from the pasuk that the Gemara brings over here. The hazalacha b'shmeres that you have to watch a korbon 4 days before it's akrova. And there's a lot of halacha that's learned out in Teres Koyanim. If you didn't check it before, it's possible. So the Harafrayim says it's 2 separate halachas. One's halacha in the Gavra that he has to mevaker it, and if he's over and he's not mavakit 4 days, it doesn't pass the korbon. And there's another halacha mitzad the chefza the korbon that has to be checked beforehand. And if he doesn't check it, it's possible. And that's halacha he doesn't need 4 days before. As long as it's mavukah beforehand, it's enough. Ein the Biskurov in Parashas Vayikra that brings a rash down to his kohenim that brings the halacha Rabbi Yossi, which we mentioned before, that Shamati, that if someone shechs a korbon tamid b'Shabbos and he's not mavakir, he's chayiv chatas, and you have to bring another korbon tamid. And the rash says that you see that the bikur is ma'akiv and yechayiv chatas, even the mandama that holds makalkal b'chaburas pot over here yechayiv because it's all the loiseired. The same way dukin shaba'ayin according to Bekiva all loiseired. Biskurov asks, what's the havana in the Rash? Or the halacha of Bikur specifically by a korbon tamid. However, all of the kabbalas don't need a Bikur, so therefore, although if your oven will not mevaka the korbon, it's possible from being a korbon tamid, it should be chal a din nedava like other hakrovas korbon sibur that wasn't nishchat kil chasoi. That the halacha is it's kosher b'teres nedava, and it's like all by Moshe chayva. So here also a korbon tamid that wasn't mevukah should be a korbon nedava. And the Biskrov says, if you'll say that the Rash understands that since the korbon was bought before the Tamid Shel Shachar, so it's possible. But the Biskrov says, if that's the understanding of the Rash, that it's because it's before Kodim Tamid Shel Shachar, then it's Tzarechim. Why is the Rash comparing it to Bekiva, the Dugan Shaba'ayin? It's not Miguf HaKorbon, it's only a din because it comes before Tamid Shel Shachar, so it definitely should be all the loy say it. Then the Biskrov continues that the Rash says further, if you say that it's a mum gomer, mikamaka might see nevela. And the Biskrov says that's mashma and the Rash that the din bikur is not a specific halacha in the korbon tamid, it's a halacha in all korbanos. Ein the Minchas Avram in Menachis that explains the Biskrov that learns that there's a halacha in all korbanos according to the Rash that needs Bikur, according to the Yisoid from his father in Harafrayim, that there's 2 separate halachas in Bikur. There's one halacha in Bikur that mitzad the Gavra, that the Gavra has to be mevaker a tamid and the Pesach 4 days before. That's halacha specifically in the tamid. And then there's another halacha that you have to check it beforehand. It's not davka dalad yom before. That's a din mitzad tamim yakiveno. It's halacha in the gufa korbon, and that's not davka in korbon tamid. Who are dins by other korbanos as well. And that as halacha, it's ma'akiv. It's felt in the tmimus of the korbon. If you over loy bikoi, it's possible. According to this mahalach, the Minchas Avram answers the Azurah that the Azurah would arrive from the Baba Kamo. The Bikur is not ma'akiv, but that's not a din Bikur in Dalad Yomim. That's a din Bikur in the mitzad chefts of the korbon. You have to mevak it beforehand, and as long as you check it before the korbon, even without a din Bikur of Dalad Yomim, the korbon's kosher. And then there's another din. They need Bikur of Dalad Yomim. That's a din mitzad the Gavra, and that's not ma'akiv.